Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I'm fine. Today I thought that I would come to you with a video giving you a little recap on the books that I read for May and June. Without any further ado, let's just discuss some books, okay? For May, I read 3 books, and then for June, I read 4 books. Okay, starting off simple with the books that I read in May, I read the Hunger Game trilogy for the first time ever. Basically, I read these books back to back to back to back because I wanted to do like more of a detailed sort of recap on why I didn't like Sunrise on the Reaping. This is my first time reading the Hunger Games books ever, and I did really like them, and I understand completely the amount of praise that they get and why they are, like, I don't know, so special to so many people. I think that for me, coming from a place of, like, I guess curiosity about the world that is created in the Hunger Games, it was kind of annoying that everything was from Katniss's perspective. Like, we only see the world through a 16-year-old girl's eyes, essentially, and so we only know what she knows. And I don't know, that was just kind of disappointing because I wanted to know more about the world itself. And obviously she doesn't know everything about the world itself. She hasn't been alive that long, as long as like the Hunger games have been going on. I think I was wanting more like world building out of the Hunger Games. I think I wanted to know more about the society itself. Why is society the way it is? If like this is supposed to be speculative fiction or like dystopian kind of fiction, if this is supposed to be like our future, what am I doing right now and what can I change right now in order to stop us from killing kids in the future? And I understand that it's like, why would we give those kind of answers to those sort of questions? It left me wanting more. Out of the trilogy itself, I liked The Hunger Games and Catching Fire, and I felt that Mockingjay was just kind of a little bit disappointing. I do still want to do like a deep dive video on Hunger Games versus Sunrise on the Reaping because I am of the strong opinion that Sunrise of the Reaping is something completely unnecessary, and I think it was only written as a cash grab, to be honest. And I think that everyone's saying, oh my god, Suzanne Collins is like so like her brain. I feel like those reviews are coming from people who have not read the Hunger Games like recently. Sorry, they've obviously read the Hunger Games as a kid and maybe they're just kind of like clouded by nostalgia, but they haven't read it recently enough to know that things just don't make sense if you're reading Sunrise on the Reaping. So Hunger Games trilogy, beautiful. And then I ended up watching all 3 movies straight after them, and I liked it. Oh, all 4 movies, sorry, but you know what I meant. My Hunger Game page, that one was my Catching Fire page, and then the boring last one, I didn't really do an interesting spread on it because I was like, I don't feel strongly about Mockingjay, so it's kind of boring at the end. Also, oh my god, I think it was so funny because in, I think, Catching Fire, so obviously was something that felt like of the time that it was like written and released in. So it would have been released in like 2010 or something like that. So this is like, you know, peak of Twilight craze with the Twilight books and the Twilight movies that were coming out. So there was a part where she described President Snow's breath smelling like blood as if he drank blood. And I'm like, are we going to be coming back to this? Or is this just her trying to be like, oh, maybe Snow's a vampire? Bitches love vampires. What if Snow also drinks blood? But then it's like revealed in the next book that his breath smells like blood because he poisoned himself so many times over so many years. So he just constantly has like blood in his stomach, and that's why his breath smells like blood, which is grosser. I feel like that was just written in the next book as a, yeah, okay, I'm gonna edit what I said about that so that it's not so fucking weird. I don't know. It felt weird, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, you are writing that because of Twilight. I know that you are writing that because of Twilight. So those were just the 3 books that I read in May. I ended up getting busy with some uni work, so I didn't do as much like fun reading in May. But then in June, I read 4 books. Starting off for June, I read The Vegetarian by Han Kang. It was translated by Deborah Smith. Now, this book is a prize winner, okay? It received the International Booker Prize in 2016, and in 2024, Han Kang was the Nobel Literature Prize winner. So whatever I have to say about this book is kind of meaningless and stupid, and I am not smart enough to give like proper critique about this book. Whatever deeper meaning there is, I haven't found it yet, and it's not going to be something that I will find anytime soon because it's not going to be something that I reread anytime soon. If you are interested in reading this book, I would strongly recommend looking into the trigger warnings. If you are sensitive anyone to still read this book, I would strongly recommend looking into it. The Vegetarian is about a woman named Jiyoung, and she has this weird dream one night, and she decides that she doesn't want to eat meat or any sort of animal products, so no eggs or dairy ever again. The story itself is broken up into 3 parts, and each part is given from a different person's point of view, but it's never from Younghae's point of view. So we get part 1 from her husband, part 2 from her sister's husband, and then part 3 from her sister. In the beginning, she keeps telling her husband that she won't eat meat because of this weird violent dream that she had. Realistically, to me, my very plain basic reading is that this woman just kind of developed an eating disorder as a way of controlling her life whilst she is living in such a strongly patriarchal society within Korea. So she develops this eating disorder as a way to sort of gain control in a world where women are being so controlled, being judged by the way that they behave, the way that they look, all of like, I guess, the societal sort of expectations. Even if we look at things like views on motherhood, or if you fall pregnant, if you produce a son for the first time, or produce only daughters, like there's so much misogyny, I guess. Like it is still such a strongly patriarchal kind of society. Again, to me, it's still read just like this woman had an eating disorder, and she unfortunately succumbs to this ED because she believes that she's going to turn herself into a tree, and trees don't need to eat food. Trees only need sunlight and water. And it just made me feel really sad at the end of it. Gave this one like a 3-star because I just don't think that I'm smart enough to get it. I would love to retry this book, but I just don't think that I have like the mental capacity to retry it again because it is so like and heavy like at the end of it. Off of the back of it, I didn't read this book like immediately after this, but I'm gonna lump it in here. But I did read Kim Jiyoung, born 1982. So I feel like I should discuss this one right after The Vegetarian, because it says it in the cover here that it's a riveting, original, and uncompromising. This is the most important book to have emerged from South Korea since Han Kang's The Vegetarian. So I was like, oh, okay. When I did start reading this book, I kind of expected that the main character would become kind of like crazy, but it wasn't. She didn't end up going crazy, or like she went crazy, but in the way that people were being like quite hyperbolic, and they were calling her crazy because she had the nerve to suggest that they split family holidays so that she can spend time with her family and her husband can spend time with his family. Well, crazy idea. Again, it's like kind of a story about a woman in Korean society being pushed to her limits because of the patriarchal Korean society. And I think that the book itself, to me and my like Western sensibilities and my Western lived experience, it's easy for me to kind of write this book off as having very lukewarm, basic feminist takes. But if I do still think of it in the context of this being written in Korea from a Korean woman's perspective about her life in Korea, this book talks about things that feel like very basic feminist concepts, like the wage gap between men and women, or the expectation that like your career is going to end once you get married, or that an employer is going to prefer men or like unmarried women, or like just, I don't know, ugly women because they're not going to get married, or like an employer is going to prefer that because then they're not going to need to provide you with like parental leave and stuff like that. Again, because of my Western sensibilities, and to me it seems so basic, and like it's easy for me to kind of like write this book off. But again, thinking of it in context of where it has been written, where it was released, the most that I know about like Korean society is just from like things like Stephanie Sue or like Rotten Mango's like either true crime cases or like stories about not even crimes but just like weird celebrity kind of gossip news where someone's life is getting ruined over something mundane that a woman has done. It is supposed to be like a work of fiction, but it did have footnotes in some of the pages where it would quote like statistics about, you know, what is happening, you know, at any sort of given time. And so one of the things that I really wish that this book did have was either an author's note or a translator's note to say why they have included like these footnotes, and like whether or not these footnotes were included in the original Korean version or if it was something that like these footnotes and these citations have just been provided for like the Western audience. I would have loved if there was some sort of note in here to say, yes, this was included, like, yes, this is the original, or like, yes, we're providing those statistics for the context to be provided to like international kind of readers. I will say it was like a very easy read. I started it one night and I finished it the next day on my train into work. The last two books that I do have are from Japanese authors. First off, I have this one, which is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Liked it. It was very simple kind of to read. Again, it is a magical realism book where people go to this magical cafe, but they can go back in time. There's a bunch of different rules. Going back in time, it doesn't change your present. I guess wouldn't necessarily change your future. I think that a lot of people do like this, and I'm interested in the other books that are in the series. I think there are supposed to be like 5 or something like that. There was a one part that I did end up like sobbing heaps in, and that is in the husband and wife section. If you guys know, then you know the husband and wife section, the part that I'm talking about, right? This is pretty good, considering that I think I bought a copy of this like a good couple of years ago. Nice to see that I finally got around to reading it. I think I probably bought this copy like 5 years ago, around the start of COVID. Good that I finally got to it. And then the last book that I read in June was this one, which is Butter by Asako Yuzuki. I was a little bit disappointed by this book. I kept seeing videos from Jack Edwards saying that like he wanted more from this book, and so I wasn't really quite sure what he meant by it. Like I already owned it, and he kept saying that he wanted more, so I'm like, okay, I guess I just have to kind of read it to understand what he means. I think the book itself was mismarketed possibly to like a Western audience. I feel like looking at this kind of cover with a bloody handprint, the blurb on the back, it gives more of an idea that there's going to be more violence, more crime, more mystery, even more of, I guess, like a thriller book compared to what it actually ends up being. It is more of a boring, it's like all of those things but boring. It's kind of a crime book, it's kind of a thriller, but not that thrilling at all. It's kind of a mystery, but there's no mystery. I understand it. It does feel like there should have been more to it, but I think that half of that came from the expectations that were set up by the cover, by the blurb, that made me think that this was going to be a lot more thrilling, a lot more interesting than it was. I think that the Japanese cover versus this cover, the Japanese cover feels a lot more appropriate to what it actually was. It was just more so a journalist coming to learn food and having a kind of introspective moment, rather than this, which made me feel as if it was going to be mysterious, thrilling. They do end up posing the question of whether or not, you know, this person in the Tokyo detention house, if Manako Kaji had actually killed a bunch of these men, if she is like a serial killer who's killing men, and not really concrete on whether or not she has killed them or whether or not she didn't. It's more so viewed as like these men killed themselves, but they killed themselves because of her, but not because she enticed them to do so. They killed themselves because she showed them love or she showed them care. And then when she said that she didn't love them anymore, she didn't want to care for them, or maybe didn't want to have like a relationship or whatever with them, they decided to end their own lives. Huh? And so we're led to believe that she's guilty of killing them, but she didn't do anything. The main character ends up like reflecting on how when she was a child, like 12 or so years old, she killed her dad. Her dad died of a stroke, and her parents were separated at the time. She didn't want to, you know, go visit her dad one weekend because she felt like his house was unclean and it wasn't great when he would cook food or anything like that. And she felt like all of this guilt and responsibility put on herself that she should have been taking care of her dad, or she should have been able to convince her mum to continue taking care of their dad, and you know, her dad would still be alive if her mum and her were just able to still take care of him. And I guess it kind of takes away like a man's agency to, you know, take care of himself. Like, how inept are men that they're unable to take care of themselves? As soon as a one woman says that she's not going to cook him dinner every night, he starves to death. There were like so many different descriptions of food as well. Butter, obviously, like food that would heavily use butter or like heavy dairy kind of products and stuff like that. So that was like interesting. The descriptions of the food was very interesting. There was parts of it that felt as if there were like poor translations. There would be parts when someone would be secreting something away, as in like tucking it in their pocket or something like that, or she stashed something in a locker at a train station, but she secreted her stuff away in this locker at a train station. And every time that I was reading secreted, I was reading secreted. She secreted a bag of clothes in a locker at a train station. Ew. It kept happening multiple times where like things that could have been stashed or put away were secreted away. They secreted an envelope. They secreted a package. And I just kept reading it as secreted. So I felt like that was a weird thing on the translations, like word choice. I only gave that book like 2 stars because it was so disappointing. I did have high expectations of it, unfortunately. Those were the books that I read in May and in June. I think we should all give ourselves a pat on the back for making it through halfway of 20 for 25. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me. If you want to talk about books, if you want to let me know what books you've read over the past few months, I would love to know that. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later.